That takes us to another wrong Prime Minister Modi is correcting, subtly, slowly, but surely. For those who came of age through campuses during India's early liberalization years, the terror of credit rating agencies would be sort of fresh in the minds. They literally determined our collective destinies by throwing up jumbled soup of alphabets. If you were AAA or AAA, you were in the elite company of Western nations. And the global financial establishment looked at you with benign indulgences, like cheap capital. If you were BB or worse, junk, your goose as an economy was cooked, which happened with India a couple of times with ratings downgrades through the 1990s and 2000s. Despite our size and scale, we were helpless. We did not control the process or the product. Like India, rest of the non-Western world, increasingly called Global South these days, was a mute spectator to a few deciding the fate of the many. Not anymore. There's the pushback. This coming week, India is launching its own yardstick to judge the rest of the world. It's going to be called RNI, Responsible Nations Index. Not exactly similar as the financial ratings, but that's the whole debate. Who gets to decide where you stand in the Committee of Nations? Let me first dig a little deeper into the existing system. Going back to the end of the World War II and the setting up of the Brettonwoods institutions, the IMF and the World Bank, the framework cast US hegemony in stone with dollar as the default reserve currency of the world pegged to the gold, and the transatlantic Western Bloc acting as its guarantor. Metrics like the GDP growth, debt to GDP ratio, and inflation became the universal yardsticks of judging a country's credit worthiness. So far, so good. By the 1970s, 3 private agencies monopolized the game. Recall how the mood of the Moody's, standards of S&P or Standard & Poor, or fiddling by Fitch, all 3 US-based, in the case of Fitch, French-owned, would determine the cost of borrowing for nations including India. The big 3 came to dominate almost 100% of the world ratings market by the turn of the century. There's a template of cognitive bias. The big 3 in tandem with the IMF and the World Bank, between them enforce Western ideals. Cut welfare, privatize, open markets, or face higher costs. This essentially became a system like a straw-sucking savings from the Global South, funding consumption in the Global North, even as the Global South borrowed back at premiums dictated by the same biased ratings. It's a rigged game where ratings act as enforcers, limiting sovereignty and perpetuating inequality. Investors treated ratings as gospel. Pension funds and banks face mandates to favor high-rated bonds. Post-Cold War, that is in the 1990s and thereafter, ratings became a geopolitical weapon to align developing states with Western agendas. Argentina's 2001 default followed repeated downgrades amid IMF austerity clashes, crippling recovery. Greece's 2010 debt crisis saw agencies amplify Eurozone woes, pressuring Athens towards privatization. During the 2016 Brexit, while the S&P did downgrade the UK mildly, it hammered Brazil over impeachment, essentially a political process. Venezuela, Russia, Iran, the list is endless. Over time, the biases stood exposed. Emerging markets got harsher treatment than advanced economies, even when fundamentals were similar. It's not just numbers, it's control. During the turn of the century, Asian financial crisis, for example, the S&P downgraded countries en masse, triggering capital flight and deepening the mess. Similarly, during the COVID-19 pandemic years, 95% of the downgrades hit only developing countries, despite milder economic hits than in the West. Why? Geopolitical proximity, cultural biases, and information asymmetries favor the global north. Now the world's reacting, and BRICS is a leading example or leading the charge, calling out the ratings terrorism of the West during the 2024 Kazan summit. Their new development bank, launched in 2014, offers loans without the IMF's harsh conditions, funding infrastructure in local currencies to dodge dollar traps. Guess what? Such is the terror of the existing arrangement, even now that the NDB has to comply with sanctions on Russia. But that only proves the point. No more passive acceptance of Western models. Russia, post-2014 sanctions, created the National Rating Agency. China launched Dagong, rating itself AAA. That's where RNI, Responsible Nations Index of India, comes into the picture. A brainchild of Prime Minister Narendra Modi as part of his larger push for Atmanirbharta and shedding of colonial mindset. Why let a declining West dictate the agenda? Look at the matrix. The RNI would be structured around three core dimensions. One, internal responsibility, focusing on dignity, justice, and the well-being of citizens. Two, environmental responsibility, covering stewardship of natural resources and climate action. And three, external responsibility, measuring a country's contribution to peace, cooperation, and global stability. Does not sound like GDP, debt, etc., but that's the whole point. How do you judge India's Operation Maitri, for example, when we supplied COVID vaccines to the rest of the world? That's where responsibility as a member of the Committee of Nations comes in. Should it not get reflected in ratings? Fitch and Moody's won't. So let's do it on our own, our way. The index, or the RNI, would cover 154 countries and is built on transparent, globally sourced data to ensure credibility and comparability. JNU and IIM Mumbai have provided institutional support. The RNI would be India's first globally anchored framework to evaluate countries on responsible governance, social well-being, environmental stewardship, and global responsibility. The initiative aims to encourage global dialogue on ethics, sustainability, food security, and value-based leadership, contributing to a more balanced understanding of national performance on the global stage. The geopolitics of rating nations is all set to change. Wait till Monday. Moving on to the last segment.
This bill would allow...
And India also is bold.
Yes, sir. So you put a 25% tariff on India for